All right, we have a sushi restaurant, has a row of 12 available seats, shown in our diagram here. Part A on the left, Anvi, Vanya, and Parita decide to go to the restaurant for lunch, and we want to find the number of ways that they can be seated in this row if they decide not to sit together as a group of three. Okay, so if we were to think about this, how we can figure out them not sitting together, right? If we were to think, okay, well, what if they all sat separate of each other? Okay, well, we can use that technique of separation, okay, and that would be none of them sitting together. But then you have to think, oh, well, what about if two of them were sitting together, and if one of them was not in there, in that group of two? That would make sure that they are not in a group of three, so that would still satisfy. But then you would have to figure out, okay, well, that was, say, Anvi and Vanya. So then what happens if Vanya and Parita were to sit next to each other, or Anvi and Parita? And so the calculations get pretty tedious pretty quickly. And so instead what we can do is we can think about what are the ways that they can sit in a group of three, okay? So if we were to kind of group them in a group of three here, right? So we have 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let's think about how we can group them in a group of three, and then we're just going to subtract that away from the total number of ways that they could sit down. So it's kind of easier to find out what we don't want in this case and subtract it from the total possible outcomes. So here we need to think about how many objects do we have. Well, I have this group of three. That's going to be one object. Okay, I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I've got 10 now instead of 12 sort of objects if we're thinking of an object as an available seat. Okay. So in order to find the ways that they can be sat in a group, so a group of three. Okay, well, the ways that the girls can rearrange themselves in this group here, okay, in that group of three, well, that's just going to be 3 factorial, okay, 3 factorial. And then we need to think about moving that group around into how many of the possible options. Well, we know we have 10 options. We just listed them out here. So we're going to have 3 factorial times 10, and that's going to give us 60, okay. Now we're going to go ahead and subtract that away from our total number of ways that they can sit at the table, okay? So that's just going to be if we think about when Anvi goes to sit down, okay, how many options does Anvi have? Well, Anvi has 12 options for sitting down, okay? Now, one of those seats has taken, so now when Vanya goes to sit down, they're going to have 11. And now 2 of those seats are taken, so when Parita goes to sit down, Parita is only going to have 10 options, okay? So 12 times 11 times 10, that is going to give us 1,320. And we can just go ahead and subtract those away from each other. So 1,320 minus 60, that gives us 1,260. So that will be our final answer for part A. And for B, we have another 3 additional people at the same restaurant sitting in the same row. And our 3 original restaurant goers now decide to sit next to each other as a group of 3. Find the number of possible ways that these 6 people can be seated. Okay, so again, we want to think about our first group here. Okay, so I have A, B, and P. So we are sitting together now in a group of 3. Okay, so the total number of ways. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 objects again. Okay, and we are sort of fitting now these 6 people into these 10 objects. However, we know that these 3 are going to be sitting next to each other. Okay, so how many ways can those 3 rearrange themselves in that group of 3? So we're just going to calculate our total number of ways this time. Okay, well, we said earlier that that's going to be 3 factorial. That's the number of ways that AVP can rearrange themselves in their group of 3. Okay, so now we think, okay, once they have, now we have how many sort of people that we're placing in these 10 seats. Well, I do have 6 people, but if I think about placing objects in these seats, I have AVP, that's going to be one object, okay? And then I'll just say B, C, and D. Those are going to be my other 3 patrons, right? That's my other 3 additional people. So in total, I actually only have sort of 4 objects that I'm placing in these 10 possible positions. And so when I think about placing the first object, well, they're going to have 10 different seats that they could sit in, okay, different places that they can go into. And then when I go to place, say, B, B is going to have 9 options left, and then C will have 8, and then D will have 7. Okay, so that's going to be our calculation there, and when we plug that into our calculator, I should get 30,240 options there.